mic again. I can project, so. Our next reader is Adam Graeber. Adam's books include Mr. Lincoln's Wars, Divine Sarah, Misfit, and the forthcoming What the Women Do. He is the University Library Program Director at Roger Williams University, in addition to being on the faculty there. And he teaches at the New York State Summer Writers Institute. Please welcome Adam Graeber, who will read from Slaughterhouse Five by
I was debating whether I should just hold the microphone anyway. Well, thanks for coming out and being part of this minute. There are many of us that are reading tonight that all live within walking distance of here, which is really a true pleasure and honor. I also wanted to make the point, I guess, that while it's important to honor, reflect, and be vigilant about the banning and censorship of the written word, sometimes events like these, which I've been part of before, can tend towards seeing the issue as a combination of a sign for how far we've come, as well as seeing it as a cautionary tale, meaning how easily banning and censorship can happen from the local to the national level. As part of my work in the library at Roger Williams, I coordinate a field office for the NGO Scholars at Risk. And almost daily, I see accounts of scholars, writers, and researchers sitting in prisons all around the world for the ideas that they are articulating on the page. So I do think it's important to remember that this is a very present issue in our world, even if it is more mitigated here or more localized here. But tonight I am going to read a short passage from Slaughterhouse 5 by Chris Vonnegut. As said, while many of the challenges of the book over the years have been the usual prurient reasons, language, sexual ideas, one of the main indictments has been its passages about Jesus and Christianity and religion, as articulated through the post-traumatic lens of the World War II veteran Billy Pilgrim, who, following his experience in the horrors of the Dresden bombing, becomes unstuck in time as a result of shell shock, seemingly doomed to relive moments of his life over and over again. The following passage is set in a psychiatric hospital where Billy Pilgrim has checked himself in during his final year of optometry school. Along with his roommate, Elliot Rosewater, who has introduced Pilgrim to the science fiction works of Kilgore Trout, is Pilgrim's fiancée, Valencia, daughter of the optometry school magnate, for whom he sees his engagement as symptomatic of his sense of going crazy. And just to bring it back home for a minute, if you were a student in Coventry in 1990, this might all be new to you, as the book was banned there that year, as it continues to be in districts still around the country. She asked him if there was anything she could bring him from the outside, and he said, "No, I have just about everything I want." "What about books?" said Liz. "I'm right next to one of the biggest private libraries in the world," said Billy, meaning Elliot Rosewater's collection of science fiction. Rosewater was on the next bed reading, and Billy drew him into the conversation, asked him what he was reading this time. So Rosewater told him it was The Gospel from Outer Space by Kilgore Trout. It was about a visitor from outer space, shaped very much like a Tralfamadorian, by the way. The visitor from outer space made a serious study of Christianity to learn, if he could, why Christians found it so easy to be cruel. He concluded that at least part of the trouble was slipshod storytelling in the New Testament. He supposed that the intent of the Gospels was to teach people, among other things, to be merciful, even the lowest of the low. But the Gospels actually taught this: before you kill somebody, make absolutely sure he isn't well connected. So it goes. The flaw in the Christ story, said the visitor from outer space, was that Christ, who didn't look like much, was actually the son of the most powerful being in the universe. Readers understood that, so when they came to the crucifixion, they naturally thought, and Rosewater read out loud again, oh boy, they sure picked the wrong guy to lynch at that time. And that thought had a brother, though there are right people to lynch. Who? People not well connected. So it goes. The visitor from outer space made a gift to earth of a new gospel. In it, Jesus really was a nobody and a pain in the neck to a lot of people with better connections than he had. He still got to say all the lovely and puzzling things he said in the other gospels. So the people amused themselves one day by nailing him to a cross and planting the cross in the ground. There couldn't possibly be any repercussions, the preachers thought. The reader would have to think that too, since the new gospel hammered home again and again what a nobody Jesus was. And then, just before the nobody died, the heavens opened up and there was thunder and lightning. The voice of God came crashing down. He told the people that he was adopting the bum as his son, giving him the full powers and privileges of the son of the creator of the universe throughout all eternity. God said, from this moment on, he will punish horribly anyone who torments a bum who has no connections. Thank you.
Eleni Sikelianos. She's the author of 10 books of poetry and hybrid works which employ a range of fields, often the sciences, as a means to explore ways of knowing. She has collaborated widely with other artists, including composer Philip Glass and filmmaker Ed Bowes. Her poems and nonfiction have been translated into more than a dozen languages, and she has taught poetry in public schools, homeless shelters, and prisons, and she currently teaches at Brown University. Please welcome Eleni Sikelianos.
I can be a little bit hard to hear sometimes. Good evening. I'm going to start with a poem by the poet. No, you cannot hear me. I see.
We're gonna get the mic.
I see cups being made around going here. I wanted to start. So I'm going to read poems by two poets, and then I'm going to read a little bit from scientist's text. And I wanted to start with a poem by Walton. You may know this poem. It's one of the most famous poems in this country, published in 1960 in her book called The Bean Eaters. And banned, so can you hear me in the back? Are we waiting? I see.
We're restarting the software.
We're restarting let me just try it. Really, I'll be really loud. And then maybe by the time the software is restarted, I can be quiet again. So, the title of the poem is actually very important too. It starts the poem, and it's a 2-line title. The pool players, 7 at the golden shovel. We real cool. We left school. We lurk late. We strike straight. We sing sin. We thin gin. We jazz June. We die soon. And so that poem, which I actually had the pleasure of hearing Brooks read aloud before she died, was banned in the 1970s in several school districts in the South because of the word jazz. And so it was interpreted to mean sex or something too sexy. And Brooks said, that's not what I intended at all, but if you want to read it that way, that's fine by me. So I think, like perhaps some of the earlier texts that were read, maybe what people were objecting to was a poem by an African-American woman who won the Pulitzer. And you can actually, I recommend going to look that poem up and listening to a recording
Brooks reading it herself. She's a beautiful reader. I wanted to read also to remember that this has been happening for many centuries. Something by the poet Sappho, from the poet from the island of Lesbos, and we actually get the term lesbian from Sappho, and in fact anyone from Lesbos is a lesbian. And actually, one of my Greek friends said, "See, we invented it. We invented lesbians." And so Sappho's poems, she wrote nine books of her poems were collected in the library at Alexander. Very, very highly regarded in antiquity. Plato called her the 10th muse. Then when the library at Alexandria burned, we still had quite a few things, but various popes and potentates decided that more of her poems should be burned, since so many of them were love poems to women. We don't know a whole lot about her life, and in fact, I think it was a French feminist theorist in her dictionary under Sappho just left a blank page. That's what we know about her. But we do know that she wrote most of her love poems to women. Maybe she ran a school for young women and trained them in the arts of poetry and singing. I'm reading Anne Carson's translation of Fragment 31. One thing to know about what we do have left is we only have one, actually now maybe two whole poems. And the one whole poem is not the one I'm going to read, it's the Hymn to Aphrodite, which is very, very beautiful. So about the man, when in fact it's very clear in the Greek she's talking about a woman talking to a man. So, Fragment 31. He seems to me equal to gods, that man, whoever he is, opposite you, sits and listens close to your sweet speaking and lovely laughing. Oh, it puts the heart in my chest on wings, for when I look at you, even a moment, no speaking is left in me. No, tongue breaks, and thin fire is racing under skin. And in eyes, no sight, and drumming fills ears. And cold sweat holds me, and shaking grips me all. Greener than grass I am, and dead, or almost, I seem to me. But all is to be dared, because even a person of poverty, and we don't know. We don't know how it ends. I wanted to... So one of my teachers was actually Allen Ginsberg, and another of my teachers was somebody who was not directly banned, but Amiri Baraka was another teacher of mine whose work in various forms was suppressed, who, because of reception, was no longer invited to give readings and so forth. And so, just as a link to the next person I want to read a little extract from, and it's the biologist Lynn Margulis, who died just a few years ago. She taught at Boston University and also at Amherst. And she was the theorizer of what she called endosymbiosis. And basically she proposed that symbiosis was also a driver in evolution, not just competition. And so it's sometimes called a kind of a feminist theory. And she wasn't directly banned, but she was ridiculed. And it was very hard for her to get her texts published. So I'm going a little outside of the lines of banned books, but I'm a poet. It's very hard to stay in the lines. And so I just wanted to read a little of her text because her theory is so beautiful. And guess what? It's been proven to be true because we now have gene sequencing and we can see that in the mitochondria there are evidence of species mergers. We would not be here if a couple of different species hadn't merged and somebody who knew how to eat merged with somebody who knew how to move, and we can do all these things in the cells. So it's kind of amazing. But you can also see that she was pretty saucy. And this is an excerpt from an essay called Gaia is a Tough Bitch. I work in evolutionary biology, but with cells and microorganisms. Richard Dawkins, oh, by the way, who used to call her Attila the Hen, so you can imagine the kind of ridicule and misogyny she was subjected to. Richard Dawkins, John Maynard Smith, George Williams, Richard Walton, Niles Eldridge, and Stephen Jay Gould all come out of the zoological tradition, which suggests to me that, in the words of our colleague Simon Robeson, they deal with a data set some 3 billion years out of date. Eldridge and Gould and their many colleagues tend to codify an incredible ignorance of where the real action is in evolution, as they limit the domain of interest to animals, including, of course, people. All very interesting, but animals are very tardy on the evolutionary scene, and they give us little real insight into the major sources of evolution's creativity. It's as if you wrote a 4-volume tome supposedly on world history, but beginning in the year 1800 at Fort Dearborn and the founding of Chicago. They take a small and interesting chapter in the Book of Evolution and extrapolate into the entire encyclopedia of life. Skewed and limited in their perspective, they are not wrong so much as grossly uninformed. So I just love her sauciness. I'm going to end on another outside the line thing. I'm sorry, Nicole. Because one of the things I think about, like in Lynn Margulis's case, those things that are not banned but that are suppressed, and how that is dangerous too. And you may be well aware of, there was the news in the Washington Post about this 7 dirty words following George Carlin's 7 dirty words that the CDC were not allowed to use, that the Trump administration supposedly said you cannot use. But actually, as it turns out, this did not come from the Trump administration. It came from within the CDC. It was an internal memo suggesting words that should be suppressed if they wanted to keep funding. So this is another kind of dangerous self-censorship. And I wanted to read the words to you, and then I would actually like you to say them with me. I'll read them first. Entitlement, diversity, transgender, fetus, evidence-based, science-based, vulnerable. And I'll say one, and I would love it if you said it with me a second time. Entitlement, entitlement, diversity, diversity, transgender, transgender, fetus, fetus, evidence-based, evidence-based, science-based, science-based, vulnerable, vulnerable. Thank you.
That was excellent. I got chills. I'm not kidding. So next up is Rick Moody. Rick is the author of 6 novels, including most recently Hotels of North America. He's also, his novel The Ice Storm was filmed in 1997 by Ang Lee's and starred Kevin Kline and Sigourney Weaver. He's also authored 3 collections of stories, a collection of essays on music, and 2 volumes of memoirs, including a forthcoming work entitled The Long Accomplishment. He teaches at Brown University. Please help me welcome Rick Moody, who will read from Black Boy by Richard Wright.
It's a real honor. That's the book, too. A real honor to be here and to read with a bunch of friends and in such a excellent context. It's perhaps of some minor interest that my novel, The Ice Storm, was in fact the subject of legislation in Arizona intended to allow college students to refuse to read assignments in literature if they disagreed with the books. The Ice Storm was mentioned in the legislation by the legislator who said of it, "No one could defend this piece of trash." Mercifully, the legislation failed. But so, at any rate, I come by standing in front of you as a person whose work has been controversial in this way. I grew up in Connecticut in circumstances of great privilege, and the only thing that enabled me to sort of break out of that was literature, capital L. And among those works in my teenage years were the works of Richard Wright, both Black Boy and Native Son were incredibly important books to me, and I probably wouldn't be able to stand here as a writer had I not read them. So I'm going to let the music do the talking and just read to you a little bit from Black Boy, and this is specifically a passage that I remember reading as a 14-year-old and it having a really profound effect on me. Hunger stole upon me so slowly that at first I was not aware of what hunger really meant. Hunger had always been more or less at my elbow when I played, but now I began to wake up at night to find hunger standing at my bedside, staring at me gauntly. The hunger I had known before this had been no grim, hostile stranger. It had been a normal hunger that had made me beg constantly for bread, and when I ate a crust or two, I was satisfied. But this new hunger baffled me, scared me, made me angry and insistent. Whenever I begged for food now, my mother would pour me a cup of tea, which would still the clamor in my stomach for a moment or two. But a little later, I would feel hunger nudging my ribs, twisting my empty guts until they ached. I would grow dizzy, and my vision would dim. I became less active in my play, and for the first time in my life, I had to pause and think of what was happening to me. Mama, I'm hungry, I complained one afternoon. Jump up and catch a cungry, she said, trying to make me laugh and forget. What's a cungry? It's what little boys eat when they get hungry, she said. What does it taste like? I don't know. Then why do you tell me to catch one? Because you said that you were hungry, she said, smiling. I sensed that she was teasing me, and it made me angry. But I'm hungry. I want to eat. You'll have to wait. But I want to eat now. But there's nothing to eat, she told me. Why? Just because there's none, she explained. But I want to eat, I said, beginning to cry. You'll just have to wait, she said again. But why? For God to send some food. When's he going to send it? I don't know. But I'm hungry. She was ironing, and she paused and looked at me with tears in her eyes. Where's your father? She asked me. I stared in bewilderment. Yes, it was true that my father had not come home to sleep for many days now, and I could make as much noise as I wanted. Though I had not known why he was absent, I had been glad that he was not there to shout his restrictions at me. But it had never occurred to me that his absence would mean that there would be no food. I don't know, I said. Who brings food into the house? My mother asked me. Papa, I said. He always brought food. Well, your father isn't here now, she said. Where is he? I don't know, she said. But I'm hungry, I whimpered, stomping my feet. You'll just have to wait until I get a job and buy food, she said.
As the days slid past, the image of my father became associated with my pangs of hunger. And whenever I felt hunger, I thought of him with a deep biological bitterness. My mother finally went to work as a cook and left me and my brother alone in the flat each day with a loaf of bread and a pot of tea. When she returned at evening, she would be tired and dispirited and would cry a lot. Sometimes, when she was in despair, she would call us to her and talk to us for hours, telling us that now we have no father, that our lives would be different from those of other children, that we must learn as soon as possible to take care of ourselves, to dress ourselves, to prepare our own food, that we must take upon ourselves the responsibility of the flat while she worked. Half frightened, we would promise solemnly. We did not understand what had happened between our father and our mother, and the most that these long talks did to us was to make us feel a vague dread. Whenever we asked why father had left, she would tell us that we were too young to know. One evening, my mother told me that thereafter I would have to do the shopping for food. She took me to the corner to show me the way. I was proud. I felt like a grown-up. The next afternoon, I looped the basket over my arm and went down the pavement toward the store. When I reached the corner, a gang of boys grabbed me, knocked me down, snatched the basket, took the money, and sent me running home in panic. That evening, I told my mother what had happened, but she made no comment. She sat down at once, wrote another note, gave me more money, and sent me out to the grocery again. I crept down the steps and saw the same gang of boys playing down the street. I ran back into the house. "What's the matter?" my mother asked. "It's those same boys," I said. "They'll beat me." "You've got to get over that. Now go on." "I'm scared," I said. Thanks.
Our mic is gone again. So that concludes the readings, and I just wanted to say thank you to all of our readers for a really just a wonderful lineup and diverse group of readings. Yeah, it was really not only a celebration of her right to read, but also a celebration of just a great expression. So. In any case, I wanted to say two things before we move to the Q&A. One is, anyone who isn't a member of the ACLU of Rhode Island, please join. You can get this brochure in the back. If you are a member, thank you. Either way, please consider donating. All of the donations tonight go directly towards our work supporting freedom of expression, defending freedom of expression, and also supporting civil liberties more generally. So thanks everyone for coming. And if I can ask, yes, oh, sorry. If I could ask the readers to come up, and maybe, maybe we could just sit down. And we're going to try and get the mic. And we're running short on time, so we'll probably only be able to take a few questions, but I did want to give everyone the opportunity, give people the opportunity to ask. Any questions?
Yes, since the ground started out with